Good evening. Good evening. I'm here to pretty much talk about some things. I kind of want to get into the Motown sector because, I got some videos coming and we're going to talk about some more stuff. Um, but this is for what people want to know, or should I say some things like some people should know. This is regarding Motown, Jackson 5, precisely. So let's get right into it. So the Jackson 5, when they initially came to Motown, uh, their first album was recorded. They recorded like 50 something odd tracks. Most of them could be is considered, I guess, demos, and they most of them came out over the years, scattered across certain projects, right, with different producers. But producer in particular, Bobby Taylor, was cutting tracks on the Jackson 5 in Detroit. Now, uh, a lot of people was like, like from the listener's ear and from what we know, the Funk Brothers played on majority of the album. I say uh, maybe except for Nobody, Zippity Doo Dah, I Want You Back. Uh, that was that's that's the corporation. The corporation produced those three tracks. The rest was Bobby Taylor. Now the interesting thing about it is what a lot of people don't realize. Now their cover of My Sharia Moore. You could tell that was done in L.A. That was that had to be like the Wrecking Crew. I believe like the Wrecking Crew was had did that track because that track is a little significantly different from all the other tracks. Like, of course, the Wrecking Crew was on the three tracks I mentioned, but in particular also uh, the My Sharia Moore. That's definitely Wrecking Crew. Even though Bobby Taylor produced that, he obviously, maybe Barry Gordy probably was like, hey, we need a new sound instead of, having the Funk Brothers on this. Let's kind of switch it up, record this in LA. Because the bass in particular on My Sharia More, that sounds like Carol K. That sounds more like Carol K. Um, the other tracks, Zippity Doo Dah, Nobody, and I Want You Back, those are Wilton Felder. You could kind of see the difference. And the rest of the tracks on the album is James Jamerson. So uh, James Jamerson is basically on um, like a he's like on majority of the tracks. So from Can You Remember, Stunning Shallows of Love, You've Changed. Um, Now my Sharia more that's not Jamerson. So I know I'm losing you, or I think it's changed. I'm paraphrasing the set list. I know I'm losing you. Chain. I know I'm losing you. Stan, Born to Love You. Who's Loving You as well. So one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. James Jamerson is on 8 tracks on that album. Now, if you want to say it's possible Tony Newton could have came in around that time and maybe filled in, a couple of parts. Maybe he doubled Jamerson, but I think it's Jamerson mostly on that. And so now one of the reasons why the Funk Brothers wasn't considered the long stay on the Jackson 5 material because they were too funky, right? They were considered the Funk Brothers was too funky for the Jackson 5. Like after that first album, because you notice the sound had changed drastically. But there is a couple of tracks that the Funk Brothers did do on ABC. True Love Can Be Beautiful. And then there's another one on there, uh, Never Had a Dream. That's definitely Funk Brothers. Um, According to uh, Dennis Coffey, they played on the Jackson 5 demos. So because of that, um, you know, so which means when you listen to something like the rest of the tracks that was left over that's scattered. So for instance, you ain't giving me what I want, so now I'm taking it back. That's the Funk Brothers. After you leave, that's the Funk Brothers. So the ones that's very like funky, but it has that classic Motown pickup. That's the Funk Brothers. So Dennis Coffey is playing on that. So Dennis Coffey definitely was playing on that stuff, and of course, Wawa Watson was around uh, in that time. Uh, so he was around during that because you could hear the sound, the funky guitar licks, the bass and all that. If you're really a avid listener, so Darling Dear, of course, that's Motown. That's the Funk Brothers. And then after that, that's when it goes into basically the whole album is basically L.A. Wrecking Crew. So L.A. Wrecking Crew, um, for the like Lewis Shelton, I think it's Don Peaks, um, Wilton Felder, David T. Walker. Um, Sometimes Bob West was on bass, and Tony Newton would come in. Tony Newton on Never Can Say Goodbye on bass. Uh, he's also on I Want to Be Where You Are, and Don't Take Your Love Away From Me. I believe I want to. I always said that's Jamerson on that, but I think that's Tony Newton as well. I think Tony Newton played a big part on Michael Jackson's solo projects. I think he played a big part. Um, and then the drum, Gene Pello, I believe that's his name. Correct me in the comments. And then I think the drum, it changes. The drummer changes. So I'm trying to figure out that other drummer. Um, so with that being said, and then of course you have the keyboards. Uh, Joe Sample, he would play on stuff, and I think Freddie Parent played keyboard, so I believe sometimes he played on stuff. Gene Page, I believe Gene Page played on some stuff too. Um, because he conducted majority of the Jackson Five material from like '69 till about like '73, like early '73. So that was happening, and then later on, you could hear the sound switches with the basses. So like William Salter would like come in, um, Chuck Rainey would come in, and so like on Uppermost by the Jackson Five, I believe that's Chuck Rainey. Just listening to that beginning, like he's like um, whatever he's doing with the bass. So thinking about it, it's kind of almost the same as the Sanford and Son theme song, which Chuck Rainey played on, right? So it really parallels and it brings everything all here. So then later on, like I said, um, drummer would be like James Gatson. So James Gatson came around like during the Dancing Machine, uh, like kind of like get together Dancing Machine period, and then you had that going on. You had wow, it's a lot of stuff that a lot of musicians that's taking place. A lot of musicians, and then you have that. Gene Page. What's interesting about Gene Page is Gene Page, who worked extensively with Motown, extensively with in the LA scene, and like I said, Jackson Five material. He would send tracks to James Jamerson in Detroit and have James Jamerson play on it, and then he would get the feel of it, and then he would listen to it and then bring it and say, okay, take Jamerson off the track, and then put whoever he wanted to say, hey, play just like that, So and he would write out the charts like how Jamerson would play, and they would play exactly. So those guys in particular would be like a Tony Newton, or it would be a Wilton Felder. Wilton Felder, Tony Newton, those guys, like when it comes to bass playing, Ray Parker Jr. also told a story about those two. I think they were doubling the bass on Barry White's "Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe." Uh, that it just goes to show you, it's two basses on there. Because you can hear the bass is fat, right? It's very fat. So this is just kind of like a quick rundown of um, what I what I had in my head. I kind of want people to kind of like get it. Those who's like into the Motown period or whatever. So like this video, comment, subscribe. Let me know what else I should talk about. I actually got a couple of videos in chamber, but I'm just throwing this out there. So yeah.